Welcome to episode 30 of the Whatnauts Review Show, where each week we pick a brand new story to talk about. It could be a comic book, could be a movie, could be a manga, could be something else. We read it, we watch it, we do what we have to do, we come back here and talk about it. My name is Kyle Springer, and I am joined, as always, by Melissa Wilkinson. Melissa, how are you doing?
I'm good, Kyle. How have you been this past week?
I've been good overall. Today was weird. It feels like Saturday for me.
Oh.
I texted you first thing when I woke up. I was like, hey, can we record a little bit later today? It was just one of those days. Oh, sweet. We can hear both of us. That's fantastic.
Awesome.
But yeah, it felt like Saturday because my head was just in a fog this morning, and I had planned on like recording with you first thing this morning and then going to the grocery store and just coming home and not having to do shit the entire day. And then that kind of got messed up. I was like, I don't feel too good. This is weird. I don't know. I'm fine, but it was just one of those things. It's like, okay, well now my day's messed up. I'm sleeping in a little bit more, and then I went to the store and then had to do, so. Oh well, who knows? You just got back from a birthday party?
Yes, my niece is 2 years old.
Terrible twos.
She's good so far. They got her this little set of like wooden cupcakes where it's like a cake base and then like a little frosting topper. You like click onto it. And so she's walking around giving everybody a cupcake. And I gave her this bouquet of just like silk flowers from the craft store for her to play with. And she's walking around just making everybody smell it. Oh, she's sweet. I hope she stays that sweet. I hope that the terrible twos is just like an old wives' tale. Like it's a cliche and it's not like it's a prophecy. It's a fact like taxes.
Yeah. Taxes stink. No one likes them.
No.
What book are we talking about this week? Dororo.
Yes.
It's a manga. This was your first manga by Osamu Tezuka. Why did you pick this one of the three that I had pitched last time?
I've always been familiar with Osamu Tezuka generally as just like, one of the big godfathers of anime and manga and this major influential creator. And I've seen Metropolis a couple times, but other than that, I'm just familiar with his stuff in passing. It's like it's about time I like really have some more first-hand experience with something he directly worked on. I mean, I don't know when he died. I don't know if Metropolis was like something he worked on or something that was produced from his materials after his death. I don't know where the timelines match up, but like let's read something from his prime that he like drew with his own hand. It sounded like a good idea.
Yeah, I'm not actually familiar when this was in his career. If this was like early career.
Yeah, I read up on this a little bit. This ran from 1966 to 1969.
It did, yes. Which is kind of crazy to think about because some of the stuff he's doing in this book is really fascinating that I don't see in Western comics until much later on.
Yeah.
There's one thing off the top of my head that I'll just mention real fast at the top here. There's a panel where Dororo gets knocked down like he's inside this vase and he gets knocked down and he gets knocked like through multiple panels. I was like, that's genius. That's so awesome. But I don't see like Marvel comics or DC Comics really working with stuff like that until much later on. I was like, that's really neat. Like I'm sure he's not the first to do stuff like that, but still, it's just like, neat.
Less of like a mainstream comics thing and more of something you'd see in like a Mad Magazine cartoon. Like this gets a little slapsticky, and I think it's really well done.
Yeah, he was kind of making comics around the same time Disney was first like starting to get big. well, they borrow from one another a lot.
Yes.
He was definitely influenced by Disney and stuff like that.
Yeah.
'Cause it like, there's certain times where I can totally see like Steamboat Willie, like it's a similar style, and it's like, oh, I can see him showing up.
Yeah.
Like if he crossed over, it'd be, oh yeah, that's believable.
Yeah, they've got the same like big hands and feet and like rubbery limbs, and I know. Yeah. Like, I remember reading this forever ago, and so I hope it's, like, a fairly accurate thing and not some piece of, like, conjecture or whatever. But one of the reasons anime has developed, like, that big-eyed style is it comes from Osamu Tezuka using a lot of big eyes, and he used so many of that because he was really influenced by Bambi and, I think, Pinocchio. Both of which, you know, by being... a big cutesy cartoon animal and like a puppet a guy painted, they've got big eyes.
Yeah, Osamu Tezuka famously also created Astro Boy.
Yes.
Which is also kind of like Pinocchio in the sense that it's this robot child that, is basically he's this real boy, So yeah, it's neat. I'm glad you got to dive into one of his books for the first time after hearing so much about it. So what did you think? Now that you've read some of his stuff.
I enjoyed it. I thought it was really fun, really sweet, and this story in particular, I just loved all of the ghouls. Like, I loved the demon aspect of it and how, like, grotesque it was at the same time as it was this cute adventure story.
Yeah. Good. Let's do a plot synopsis first. We probably should have done that just a minute ago. But let's do that, and then I'll weigh in on my general thoughts, and then we can get into spoilery stuff. So the book is called Dororo. I believe that's how you pronounce it. It's Dororo. And it follows these two characters, one of which is named Dororo, though he's not the first main character that we meet. The other one, Hyakkimaru, I believe is how you say his name. He's the one we're introduced to first. And he is a boy that is born without his limbs and a whole bunch of other different body parts because his father made a deal with 48 different devils. He's like, I'll basically sell you my first born son if you let me be a powerful ruler. And that's kind of what happens, and they think he's so like ugly and misshapen that they, like Moses, just kind of send him in this basket to be like, well, you can go do something else with your life now. And the two kind of grow up, and they end up mating, and they travel around Japan searching for these demons. And I guess if they defeat one of these demons, then he gets a body part back.
Yeah.
And it's just their kind of adventures on the road. Anything else to add to that? You think that's good for a synopsis?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Hyakkimaru is just sort of on this noble mission to like find a place where he can be happy, as unique of a person as he is. And Dororo is just like a child thief. And Dororo initially follows him just because he's like, I want that sword you have. And Hyakkimaru is like, you can't have it. It's part of my arm.
He's like, who are you? No.
Yeah.
It's good. They have a like a it's an interesting kind of chemistry that they have there, where it's at first he's like, I'm gonna follow you so that when you're sleeping I can steal your sword. And then they end up becoming friends, maybe even brothers,
Yeah.
I guess you could argue, brothers in arms. No pun intended, I guess. But yeah, it's good. I had a lot of fun. It's very the art is childlike.
Yeah.
Like we mentioned, it has that Disney influence, but there's kind of a body horror aspect to this, which I was not expecting, and I ended up really liking. I was like, this is really neat, because it's not like I feel like I could hand this to a younger kid.
Yeah.
Because it's not like horror, it's not super bloody, it's not grotesque. There are a few curse words.
Yeah.
And there is, I guess, some casual nudity in it, but it's never sexualized.
No.
It's just very fast. But it's one of those things, like, I expected this to be a little bit more childlike and happy-go-lucky, and we have those moments, but then it's like, you're hunting down demons and fighting them and stuff like that. There's pirates and there's treasure and all of that stuff, so it's kind of like a fairy tale, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, it was good. I enjoyed it. It was not what I expected. I do have my problems with it. But yeah, it was good.
Yeah.
It was good. I liked it. I had a lot of fun with that. I guess it's kind of an honorary Halloween one. I didn't expect it to be that. So.
Filled with so many, like, demons and ghouls and ghosts and horrors of all kinds.
Yes. A little bit of housekeeping before we get into spoiler territory here. We don't have much except just a follow on YouTube and Twitch would be fantastic. We are trying to grow both of those channels. You can find us on YouTube by searching the Whatnauts podcast, and our channel will pop up. And you can find us on Twitch at twitch.tv/thewhatnauts or on thewhatnauts.com/live streams, and a follow on both of those would be much appreciated. And I believe that is it for now. Reviews on iTunes always help. Go tell friends and family and stuff like that. One last thing, I guess, kind of before we get into spoilers, in the chat, Jotnamas is shouting out, I heard kill demons to get back body parts, and I suddenly remembered a recent manga called Uratoru, which includes some historical Genpai War aspects, but is ultimately alternate history and is gory AF. Gory and kind of horny too, so even better. So where do you want to dive into this one? What's on your mind this week with this?
I liked the kind of monster of the week format that this story had. I like that they keep running into just like some different monster at each turn, a lot of which seem like based on Japanese mythology, whether it's like a deliberate monster pulled from there, like the fox with 9 tails, or just sort of an original creature with just like, you know, that culture is like the background that would always be there if you were making something in historical Japan. I thought that was really fun. Just like the parade of weird creatures was my favorite part of this. I think my favorite one might have been the giant potato baby that was made out of like 50 other babies.
That one was interesting one. I think my favorite one was the one that at the end was just like eat all the
Yes!
food, eat until you can't eat
Yes!
anymore, and then he would like go inside the belly button of the person and I guess eat all the food that they had eaten, and then come back out and was like, okay, you can eat more because I just ate all the food
Yes.
inside you. And I was like, this is amazing. This is so funny.
That reminded me a lot of like the beginning of Spirited Away, where her parents eat the food that isn't theirs and they get turned into pigs. That like like old fairy tale horror. And I think that's something that like fairy tales and fairy stories have kind of throughout the world, this thing of like eating having like a consequence attached to it. Like, you know, Persephone goes down into the underrealm and she eats the 6 pomegranate seeds and she's stuck there 6 months out of the year. And there's so many...
It's you getting all literary.
Like, there's just so many stories about, like, okay, now you're in the fairy realm. If you eat something, you'll be stuck here. Or if you eat something, you know, it's like you've taken something from them and then you'll owe them a favor in return. Like, that... Beyond all the, like, more traditional horror elements of this story, the monsters, the blood, the murder, that, like, fairy tale horror, I think, hits you in a really, like, primitive, early place, because it's something you're just exposed to when you're, like, a little kid, and you're like, what? I go somewhere and, like, I can't eat anything? Like, I can't eat a raisin? If I eat a raisin, I'm stuck there? Like...
You don't want raisins anyways, kid. You want the chocolate chip cookies. Go for those.
But just, like, the tiniest thing could have this giant impact, and it hits you in this, like, tiny child, like, huddled under a blanket place of, like, fun horror.
Yeah, it kind of serves as a lesson, right? It's like what do they call them? The biblical ones, parables, right? Where it's this story that's kind of being told to teach some kind of lesson. Both, you know, there's biblical examples, there's the grim fairy tales that, you know, have all of these, and don't do this, don't eat that, you know, don't do too much of this because that's a bad thing. Be nice, you know. And I think a lot of these kind of had something like that. Like, they had morals to the story. Like, they weren't necessarily always clear, but it was like, okay, this one has to deal with wealth. Like, wealth can be good, wealth can be bad. Here's this person that's exploiting wealth, and that's not a good thing, you know. And that was something that I really appreciated out of this book. I guess was one of the things that I was not expecting. The last thing I read from Osamu Tezuka was his book called Buddha, which is phenomenal. It's basically his like retelling of the life and times of Buddha, but it's in this like much more epic scope. It doesn't always follow him. There's a whole bunch of different characters, and you kind of see it all like shape up and wrap up into one big story, and it's fantastic. But that it didn't really have the like smaller stories that it's like, here's the lesson that we learned this week in this story, in this monster of the week. It is more so one big giant story. And I've also read another one from him, Message to Adolf, which is a like murder mystery, like historical like what if thing, and it kind of deals with the so-called rumors that Hitler may have had Jewish descent somewhere in his line. It can't necessarily be proven, you know, because unfortunately he ended up killing most of them. But it's this like murder mystery set within that, and like dealing with that, and it's again just this overarching story, and And so I was like, I kind of like these smaller comics, like these smaller stories. Like here's the issue that came out this week or this month, you know, and you can learn this story. Here's a new adventure of Hyakkimaru and Dororo, and here's what they learned this time. You know?
Yeah, and I like the way they were broken up. Like, it wasn't like one chapter is one adventure. Like, some would be like 2 or 3, and like it kept, like, it didn't have like the same pattern every single time. But I think the main thing I didn't quite like about this book was just that, like, too many times they go to a town and they help the town and they're like, wait a minute, that kid's body is weird. Get out of here, weirdo.
He's a demon
like,
too.
It happened like 3 or 4 times, like, the same way. I'm like, okay, I'm getting kind of tired of this. Like, I want there, you know, like, I knew exactly how long the story was going to be going into it, but I would have liked the, you know, the illusion of, oh, this is a town of allies we can come back to if we need it. And they'd meet individual people in various towns that would be very nice to them, like the girl in the big monster costume who doesn't survive, but she is nice to them. But the general populace of each town was like the same, like, raving mob from place to place they went to. And I would have liked a little bit more variety. Like, maybe, like, balance out a very cruel town with, like, a more nice town, and they were all just, like, the same baseline of, we don't trust you, weird demon boy.
Yeah, I mean, if you did meet a weird demon boy, I'm assuming you probably wouldn't trust him anyways. But, yeah, no, that did kind of happen multiple times, and it was this thing of, okay, this is happening again. Which I'm wondering if I would have minded it as much if it happened more. Like, if we did actually get to see him defeat all 48 of these demons, and there was like 48, like, maybe a little bit shorter chapters of, you know, and stuff like that, and it's the same type of thing each time. Maybe that could be a gimmick that kind of worked in the sense. I mean, so as I was writing it, I kind of got the thought that this was more of it seemed to me like a long form of, like, the 3-panel comic that, like, Western comics do in the Sunday papers and stuff like that, right? Which is, I guess, just a variation on beginning, middle, and end, you know, first, second, and third act. But it's I guess, like, his style of comics and his style of storytelling is this very childlike way of, they say one thing and then the next thing happens, and it's very, like, they don't sit and stew on all of this. They're not metaphorically posturing or, you know, in going into all of these, you know, what they're thinking and stuff like that. It's just, look, we should go that way. Okay, let's go that way. They went that way, you know. And I like it because it helps move the story along faster. But that's kind of how I saw each of these kind of daemons. It was a little bit longer than that 3-panel thing, but that's what it set up. They got to a new town. Here's the problem. They fixed it, and we're kicked out. Moved on. It's like, you know, so maybe if it was shorter and it happened more often. Yeah,
to where it's almost like a running gag or something.
Am I completely wrong? Yeah. I mean, I could be wrong, and that could just make it a million times more annoying. But yeah, that was one of the things that I was just like, okay, I can kind of see what's happening here. If you had to guess, when do you think this was in his career? Because I don't know off the top of my head.
I read about this a little bit, and I do remember reading that while he was working on this comic, like, the chance came up for him to work on another project, and he just developed other things that he was more interested in. So that's why this comic just sort of ends with, and here's a demon that's made out of all of the other demons you would have had to fight. Like,
that's kind of what I felt like how this story ended up. So I feel like this is maybe more early on in his career.
I think so.
Again, we could be completely wrong. But yeah, like it felt like he was like, oh, I have this idea for this like maybe monthly thing that can go on for as long as I need it to. But then it's like, oh, I have this idea for Astro Boy. Maybe I should go work on that instead.
And I remember
and it just was like, okay.
reading that like the more gruesome aspects of this comic and how those were received pretty well, like allowed him to go do that comic Blackjack about like the surgeon.
Okay. I've heard of that one. I've not read it yet. I mean, it felt like it was early on in his career. Not only, I guess, because of that almost serialized nature, but just plot-wise, too. I didn't know, like, are we actually hunting the demons, or is the book about Dororo? Because that's what the book is called. But then I felt of the two kind of protagonists, we stuck with Hyakkimaru most of the time, and he was actually the main character, and the book ends with him too, because it's like, and 50 years later he found all the demons supposedly. This is, I think, the distinction between the two of them.
Hyakkimaru is the more active character. Like, he's the more, inciting action. He's the person making us go from place to place. But his actual character, like his personality, his values are more or less the same from beginning to end. Dororo, like, does less to further the plot along, but he's the one I think is actually growing more. Like, he's got the stronger character arc from beginning to end. So there's that.
that is a good point. Because I actually liked Dororo's character a lot. And I without them, the big kind of realization about his character, I kind of saw like the first time when you find out that he has the map.
Oh, really?
On his back, yeah. If you notice in that, well, all right. So it's the moment when he's trying to get Dororo to bathe.
Yes.
He's like, no, fuck you. I'm not gonna take a bath. How dare you? And Hyakkimaru kind of drags him into the lake or the river and rips off his shirt, and as he's kind of falling down, the first thing Dororo does is cover up his chest. And I noticed that. I was like, okay, that because I think in that panel they didn't really mention. I don't think the first thing was the map. It just has like Hyakkimaru has this face of like shock, like, oh my gosh, like I just saw something I probably shouldn't have. And then they go on to like, oh, there's this map on his back and it's tattooed on him, but not really. Who knows? Yeah. But yeah, it was that one thing. Like when I saw the panel, I was like, interesting. Like choice of movements,
Yeah.
And then it comes out that he's not actually a boy; he's a girl. And I guess we're persisting on using him stuff. I feel like that's
that's how Dororo feels
for the character. Yeah. And I like that. I like this whole like mystery of finding the treasure, and there's a map that's tattooed on his back. Shout out to Prison Break if you've seen that show, because that's basically the exact same thing.
What it reminded me of is the movie Waterworld. There's a little girl in the movie Waterworld who has a map on her back to like where dry land is.
There you go. unfortunately, only season 1 of Prison Break was good, and after that it went downhill very fast. But yeah, like I liked both of the storylines.
Yeah.
Like if we only followed Hyakkimaru for this demon hunting, like let's go kill these 48 demons and get my body parts back, and then confront my father, that would have been a fantastic story. But then I felt like even though the title of the book was Dororo, that was kind of a wrench in the whole plot that we're introduced to. But I liked it just as much. Like, I wanted that whole, like, we have to sail out to that island and find the treasure. Like, I felt like that could have also been the end of the book. Like, just final confrontation. We're here finding the treasure, and it turns out there actually was no treasure, or I mean, I guess it's like it's not in the spot you think it is, and then they just excuse me, I have the hiccups. They kind of just drop that plot line after that, and I was kind of like, well, okay, the treasure wasn't there. Let's go find that.
Yeah.
What happened with that? Is there treasure? Or like, I don't know. What do you think about that? Which did you like one plot better than the other? How did that shake out?
I loved all the monsters, but like I've never been an actual action person. So, like, I would just sort of, like, flip real fast through the fight scenes. Like, oh, I know Hyakkimaru is going to win. He's going to get a new limb or something at the end of it. But I'd never, like, glaze over and, like, skim just the scenes of him and Dororo talking to each other.
Yeah. Okay. So, maybe you were more in the middle?
I think so.
Where it's like
I like the...
You kind of liked everything that happened, but you were more there for the moments between the two characters.
Yeah.
Is that?
Yeah, like I love their interactions with each other, and I love them like running into the monsters and like working together. Like, especially all the scenes where Dororo's like, okay, I'm gonna go do my thief stuff. Like, he's just out there to like steal things. And then he runs into, like, important knowledge about the monster. Like, he overhears the right thing, or he just peeks into the right room and he sees something. And, like, then he has to go back and, like, tell Hyakkimaru about it. And, like, I like that part of it. I think I could have done with a little bit less sword fighting.
Sure. For as much as I love Tezuka's art style, he's not... At least in my opinion, he's not the greatest at, like, clear-cut action. But that's also a problem I have in manga, generally. Sometimes they focus too much on these, like, up-close action shots. Yeah. There's all these, like, directional lines. And it's almost like a Michael Bay film where it's like, that just looks like metal in a blender.
Yeah.
Like, this just looks like cloth moving in multiple directions.
Yeah, especially because, like, there's not a... Like, this is a black and white comic, and it's set in a historical period where everybody's wearing very close to the same style of clothing, and, like, there aren't... Like, some of the bad guys they run into are, like, super cartoony, but the other, like, same level foes, like, you guys have more or less the same body types. Like, they don't have incredibly distinctive silhouettes. So when it's, like, these two little shapes, like, fighting each other in a big field, it's like, okay, that one's you, and there's your arm, and your leg's over there, and...
That looks like a sword, but I don't know whose sword. Yeah. That makes sense. That if you're not super into action, all those sword fights and stuff like that may not have been a selling point for you.
I did like that. I think he knew when to, like, give you a break And he'd just have this big splash page. It would be like a whole page or like, half the page or whatever that's just like an establishing scenic shot with just these beautifully detailed like trees or temple grounds or whatever. And those were lovely. And I think he was very good at illustrating them, something that was so outside of his normal like cartoony style of the actual human figures. He could also do just a beautiful realistic backdrop and then just let it sit there for a moment, and it's like exactly the moment you need, and then he knows when to move on.
Exactly. It's those splash pages are always very, to use one of those like hot button words, it's very cinematic.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
I think besides Disney, another major influence is Kurosawa. And because Kurosawa always liked to work in black and white with like samurai kind of sword fighter stuff like that, but he had like this very good appreciation of nature and rural life and just the everyday farmer and stuff like that.
Yeah.
He would show that stuff really well, and I think that was one of the strong suits with this book. Not only those splash pages, but he often didn't need to use dialogue to tell his story, which I think is always fantastic, and I'm an advocate for if you can let your art speak, and tell this story. You don't need to explain everything that is happening. But what else? What did you like the comedy? What else is on your mind?
I was going to say another thing this artistically reminded me of, and I have no idea of the timeline, so I don't know if this was something that inspired Tezuka or that Tezuka went and inspired, but it reminded me a lot of like European comics, like the kind of goofy shape, like the big-bodied, big-nosed, like growling, samurai they'd run into reminded me of like Asterix, and like the kind of drooped over hats and like the big round feet with like the little lump on the end reminded me of like Smurfs, and just the sort of expressiveness reminded me of like Tintin. Yeah,
it's funny because I mean it all kind of goes in a big circle and then back and stuff like that. You'll see like you'll see Disney did his thing, and obviously Tezuka is inspired by that, and then we get other cartoons based off of that, like Astro Boy and Speed Racer and stuff like that, and then you start to see American cartoons start to look more like that. You start to see Thundercats and He-Man and stuff like that, and then they kind of split and went their own way, where anime and manga very much had their own style, whereas Western cartoons was like Courage the Cowardly Dog and Ed, Ed and Eddie and like Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends, or like Adventure Time and stuff like that. They have completely different styles, but then now they've also kind of started to go back and forth with like Avatar: The Last Airbender and stuff like that. So I think everyone always kind of borrows from everyone else. It's like, ooh, I like that, I'm gonna take that. So it's good. It's good.
Yeah.
This Smurfs is a good call. I didn't think of that. And Tintin.
Yeah.
That's a good one. Nice. Okay. Did you ever watch that Tintin animated movie? That like CG one?
Yes.
I really liked that film.
Yes.
I don't think I've met anyone else who's like watched it.
No.
Except for you now.
I don't remember a lot of details about it, but I remember like there's one, like they're moored out on a boat, like their ship is capsized and they're just in this rinky-dink little lifeboat, and Tintin's like so mad at himself because like I think he thinks he did something to cause the shipwreck, and Captain Haddock just turns to him and he says, if you being a terrible person is the signal you're putting out. That's the only signal anybody is ever going to pick up on Tintin. Like, you just have to boost your spirits up, and, like, other people will view you better, and your life's gonna go easier. And, oh, it was a sweet movie. I'd want to watch that one again.
It's Indiana Jones when he's younger and with a dog.
Yes!
And that makes it better.
And he's, like, just a reporter... And, like, Tintin's not... We're not here to... We will have to do an episode about a Tintin so we can actually talk about Tintin.
Yeah, we'll have to find some Tintin something to watch. Or read the old comics.
But about these heroes we're dealing with here, I really loved the twist about Dororo himself, because it's kind of up in the air. Like, like, it's his father's old friend, like, his old, like, war buddy that finds him and is like, I know you've got this map on your back that'll show us where your father's treasure is. And, like, he didn't know Dororo was a girl, I guess we will say. And he thinks Dororo's father made him, like, wanted a boy and is like, you're gonna be a boy. But Dororo's like, no, I'm a boy. I've always been a boy. And
I'm a real boy.
Yeah, and then Hyakkimaru says, I think maybe your parents raised you as a boy so that you would be tough. And, like, Dororo did have, like, a treacherous upbringing. Like, he went through bad times. Yeah. But we were never going to know, like, exactly why this is. And it's possible, like, when little Dororo, real small, is like, I want to be a boy. And his parents are like, okay, a boy you are then. But Dororo just doesn't remember that's ever saying that. You know, he might have been like 3 or something. Your memories don't go back that far, but you kind of have the beginning of a sense of self that early. It's like, we don't know, like, did he choose this and his parents embraced it? Or was this something his parents, like, kind of molded him into? Is like a practical thing.
Considering his mother was also a badass ninja warrior person.
She was cool.
Yeah, I liked her. I can see Dororo wanting to be... Well, I like her, but like again, especially in that time, I think that's not a typical role for a woman.
Yeah.
I mean, we have the whole story of Mulan, too, where it's like, that's not your place. Like, you shouldn't be there. And then she's like, well, screw that, you know? And, like, I can see it. I can see Dororo admiring those qualities and not really seeing a distinction between being a boy or a girl, but then going out in the world and seeing, oh, the way I've kind of been raised is a little bit different. I feel like I can be tough anyways, but they think only boys can be tough.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be a boy.
And
who knows?
And the way Hyakkimaru treats him at the very end, where he's like, you know, go grow up and become a fantastic lady, whatever, or his parting
I actually
words.
didn't like that.
I could kind of see it as this way of saying, like, you don't have to change anything about who you actually are. And
that's true.
It was almost... I kind of inferred into it that this is a landscape that has been so dangerous and disserving to women. And he's like, Dororo, you have the capability to really set things right and live as bravely and as safely as you have been, and be a lady if you want to. Like, you could kind of fix things if you really set your mind to it.
But if it's true that he's basically saying, hey, like, you don't actually have to change who you are to be liked or respected or fix things, that's what Hyakkimaru was doing. Like, he's fighting these demons to get these body parts back that he wasn't born with, technically. I mean, I guess he was. Who knows exactly when the whole "we're gonna take your limbs" thing
he's born
happens,
as like a lump.
He's born as a potato.
Yeah, he's the real potato here.
He's but I mean, that's the thing. Like, if Hyakkimaru truly believes that, why go after these demons? Like, why doesn't he just go confront his father right away?
I think it's...
And just be like, hey, you fucked up, but I'm taking pride in who I am.
I think it's also something about, like, that wasn't supposed to happen. It's not as if these were just natural birth defects. It's like, oh no, a person did a bad thing. Lots of people, you know, counting a demon as a person, did a bad thing. And he's got this innate sense of justice, and he's like, I need to set this right. Like, don't go around taking body parts from babies.
To the tune of Don't Go Chasing Waterfalls by TLC. Don't go taking body parts. Just stick to the swords and the prosthetics you're used to. Anyway.
Another thing I liked was that it was completely random what body part he was getting back. Like, it wasn't like they defeat that hunger ghost and then, like, oh, I have a real stomach now. Like, no, like, it's just, I forget what he gets. I think he gets another eye or something. Like, there's no correlation. I liked how that was just kind of random, how, like, there's a basic formula to every one of these adventures, but, like, you know he's gonna, like, put the quarter in the gachapon machine, but you don't know what toy he's gonna get out of it. He's like, oh, I've got an arm this week. Okay, cool.
It's like, come on, another hand. Come on, another hand. Papa needs a new pair of gloves. Yeah, that was neat. I guess that's one way of looking at it. To flip the script on that, I kind of wanted, since the stories had such a, like, here's the lesson you should learn. We're dealing with poverty here. We're dealing with vanity here. We're dealing with gluttony here, or deception, you know. I kind of wanted there to be more of a connection, but I was also fine with it not, you know.
Yeah.
The one thing that I also felt like they didn't really address is that as he kind of gains these body parts back, he's also kind of losing tactical advantage that he used to have. He has a leg with a gun in it, like he has a sword in his arm, he has a nose with explosives in it, you know. But as he starts to lose these body parts, they could have also, like, he could have also used that against other demons. And now that he's starting to gain his senses back and his body parts and stuff like that, he's also not used to them. Like, he's not used to the way things look or how fast something looks like when it's moving towards him and stuff like that. So I was kind of hoping for more of that as well. But I mean, it's not what we got. You're fine. Things are happening in the back.
No, my roommate just opened my door to show me a Halloween wig she bought. She looked really good.
Quality content. But yeah, like that's one thing. I guess if this had gone on longer, maybe that's something I would have wanted them to explore. Like, they're fighting a demon and he forgets that he just got a new arm back, and so he tries to use that as his sword, and he's like, oh shit, that's not a sword anymore. Slap you. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I would have liked to have seen this story really serialized out, and, you know, we don't have to, you know, some of the demons can team up. It doesn't have to be 48 individual chapters. There could be a cluster of, like, 5 of them. You can compress them a little bit. But I would kind of like to see the journey continue, and I'd like to see, like, the effect they are having on people. Like, do they run into somebody who they helped before? I'd love for them to go meet Hyakkimaru's dad again, and, you know, that dad can, like, see how his boy's grown up to have real human body parts now. Yeah. And whenever he grows a limb back, he takes, like, the prosthetic and he buries it. Like, he memorializes it out in, like, the forest or something. And I'd love to see way in the future. Like they're digging
Somebody finding it.
Yeah, like they're digging for turnips or whatever, and they're like, this is an arm. Where did this arm come from?
Is this a turnip?
I can't feed my family with this. Or like a dog digs it up, and there's just a dog walking around with just an arm.
With a sword in its mouth. Yeah. That would have been nice. I think there was at least an anime movie or a anime that was made based off of this. I didn't really look into it. There's some kind of animated version of this that I'm interested in watching and seeing what they do with it. I think another thing that I feel like maybe could have made it better is if, like what you said, is that like it didn't have to be one by one, he goes after these things, but have a bunch of them team up. And I'm wondering if somehow they could condense the story to where the treasure is hidden in the village that Daigo, or however you say his name, is in, and that's where the actual treasure is. And so it's one of those things like, oh well, we both have to go there anyways. Let's go there. You can get the treasure, then go help out the farmers. You can we'll hunt the demons on the way, because they didn't even really have to hunt them. Like the demons were following them and like tormenting them, so it's just like along the way we can kill as many demons as we can get, and then we can confront your father. So I'm like, what do you think? Do you think if they condense this, do you think it would have been better?
Yeah, I think that could be smart. Or just like cut the number of demons down, because like we really see him get like, okay, he gets 2 eyes, an ear, an arm, a leg, I think, and just speaking. I don't know precisely what body part that correlates to. It seems like that would need more than one body part, but he can talk all of a sudden. Yeah. And like maybe, like I don't know how many parts you have that somebody could take. I don't know if like he's missing a gallbladder or whatever. This maybe doesn't need to be 48. You could condense it to like 12.
I mean, we never saw him poop. So maybe he doesn't have a bladder at all. Who knows? Kind of convenient though.
Yeah. And like, what if he's just like missing nipples, and then he's like, do I need these?
He's like all of he's the Tin Man and the Scarecrow and the Lion all mixed into one big thing. I kind of wish that at the end, when he confronted his father, now that I mentioned that his father was like, yeah, nothing actually happened. Like, I'm not the ruler of anything, really. Like, I'm just a big fake, It's like, oh, well, you were just born deformed, and now you've been, like you've been possessed by all these spirits that are, like, growing your limbs back and stuff like that.
That sounds like a good, like, nightmare, like, wake up in the middle of the night, like, what's real?
But then it's the like, Wizard of Oz, like, behind the curtain, like, you're actually just, like, you're not in charge of anything, So, might be neat. Who knows? Who knows? I don't really know if I have much else to say. I mentioned the comedy earlier. What did you think of that?
I liked it. I'm not pulling, like, any specific jokes off the top of my head right now, but I remember there were a lot of moments that I did laugh out loud in and giggled a little bit. Oh, like, it's this fun...
more cute than it is funny.
Yeah, it's not, like, super, like, gag-a-minute jokey. It's just sort of... just like a little wacky. It's just like Dororo just yelling insane things, like crazy insults at Hyakkimaru and everybody else.
Well, there's stuff like that, and obviously they're in ancient Japan, but I think they mention there was some like more modern technology that they mentioned. Well, it's not like we can call them, on a phone,
Yeah,
so they make these kind of self-aware, like almost self-aware jokes. Or there's the time when I think is it Dororo's father or Hyakkimaru? No, it's someone, but they get the note and he's like, I can't read. And he's like, oh, that's okay, we can leave that to the writers to actually read.
Yeah,
it's like, okay.
Yeah, I like those little bits.
They're good. I think he does a lot with wordplay, which is really cool.
Yeah, this thing's chock full of footnotes, like explaining all the different, like, you're just like syllables that mean things in Japan that just do not translate, so they have to just spell it out for you. Like, I think one of them is, I think Tezuka, like, can translate to hand grave, and that's like why Hyakkimaru like buries his arm. Yeah, which was fun.
Yeah, there's stuff like that. The one that kind of hit me as I was writing it was the story about that like rat monk, Master Splinter, as I liked to call him in my head, when he turned out to be bad, and I knew he was. I was like, Master Splinter, no. But in that there's like a footnote about the word Shika. It was, his name was like Shika something, and it was like monks something. And there was that note about the word monk can also mean monster.
Yeah.
Like in Japanese, I guess, depending on what symbol you use or what, but then the word Shika can either, it means like for or become, and the word become could also mean monster.
Yeah. So his name's Father Monster.
Basically. But that stood out to me because I'm a big video game fan and I play a lot of video games. The most recent Zelda game, the Legend of Zelda game, you wake up and there's these 4 like mythical beasts that you have to go like defeat, or not defeat, but they've been possessed or there's something wrong with them, and you have to go solve the puzzle and defeat them and stuff like that, and then they become good and they help you defeat they help you defeat Ganon. But your like map in the game is called a Sheikah slate. It's like this ancient stone that has all this technology in it and stuff like that, and it's what helps you locate those monsters, all the stuff on the map and all that stuff. And so it was like 4 monsters is what as this footnote said, that's what the word Sheikah means. I was like, oh, like in Zelda, the 4 mythical beasts that you have to go get, there's 4 monsters. It's like, that's really neat. And you, like, each one you defeat, you get like a new power and stuff like that. And so it's like you're kind of becoming these monsters. I don't know, it's a stretch, I guess, maybe, who knows. But yeah, so I was like, oh, that's neat, I get it now, I understand, I can speak Japanese now, except not.
This is so silly. Some cultural reference that I got from this. Like, oh, I've heard that. This is what it means. There's like a village that lies like right in between. It's that big wall, I think. Is that big wall that separates like the 2 warring countries?
Yes.
They're like the 2 warring like states or however it is they're divided up.
After this.
There's like a wall that separates them, and the wall is named after the city of Panmunjom, I think, which separates, or it's right on the border between the 2 Koreas. And God, if you don't know what this is I'm gonna have to spend so much time explaining it. It's one of the things Billy Joel mentions in the song "We Didn't Start the Fire." Do you know what I'm talking about?
I know the song. I know Billy Joel, but no, I have. Besides that, I would have not known.
Billy Joel has a song called "We Didn't Start the Fire," and it's this fast-paced litany of just major events of the 20th century up until, the mid-'80s or whenever it was he had written these songs. Yeah, and he's just like...
The world was turning.
Yeah, and
Ryan started the fire.
Yes, if you know it from nothing else, you know it from The Office.
Yes.
But he's just like fast-paced, like saying the names of all these major, events and landmarks and people and things of the 20th century. And Panmunjom is one of those. And I never knew like exactly what it was until I read this, which predates the song "We Didn't Start the Fire."
Yeah.
I just thought it was funny that those two things like linked up in my head. Like, okay, Billy Joel pop hit and Osamu Tezuka manga, like, you put them together and I've learned a thing.
Yes. Thank you, Billy Joel and Osamu Tezuka.
You're both pioneers in your field.
Exactly. Learn from the masters,
Yeah, the two of them.
So yeah, I was gonna kind of ask you about that story in particular.
Yeah.
Because that I think was one of the stories that definitely was heavy-handed on, hey, there's a lesson to learn here. Because I don't think... I mean, I would have, but I wouldn't have. I was... It's one of those things that's like, okay, I can see the connection to North and South Korea, but I don't think I would have necessarily jumped there immediately until they had that footnote. But I think that was one of my favorite stories, though. In there, it was just a weird thing. There's this giant wall. Like, what is this? Is it a rock climbing wall and some weird joke that he's about to make? But there's skulls everywhere and all that. I was like, what in the world is this? And it's these two towns that have been separated and they're at war, and there's a child who like went to go see someone on one side when the war happened, and now he can't get back home and all of this stuff. I was like, this is crazy. I love this. I mean, not that that I love what is happening.
Hooray!
But yeah, it's like, this is a really good story, like good just story, and yeah, I mean, I guess I wasn't going anywhere in particular with that, but yeah, I mean, did you have a favorite story? I know you mentioned your favorite monster. Yeah,
I love that big potato baby. Oh. Yeah, I
gotta love big potato babies.
Yeah, I liked that one, especially because there was that little bit of gray area at the beginning where they're like, oh, like a benevolent nun or abbess or whoever they called her, like used to run this temple and would take care of all of these orphans, and then the temple burned down, and then like they go visit like the local magistrate or whoever, and they're like, oh no, like she worked them to the bone, she was terrible, like the temple burned down is like karmic punishment for her. And like this guy seems shady and you presume he's lying, but you don't know. And like it's this sort of thing, like they're not going to go around and ask all the townspeople. Like maybe at the end of the day, like our two heroes don't really know what happened. And I like how much fogginess there can be throughout this story. That can happen throughout a lot of like historical stories where it's like, well, unless we find the one person who was there to see this happen that can actually give us a first-hand account, like, we don't know. There's no information search, like, there's barely written records, like, we're just gonna have to wonder about this forever.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of wild how all that works. Too bad they didn't have a Sheikah slate that could map it all out and all that stuff. Or Google. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that one was good. And then my other kind of favorite, I guess my like next two runner-ups was the one girl who dressed up as the
Yeah.
monster and would scare him off. I thought she was a cool character.
Yeah.
Would have loved to see more of that.
Yeah.
But of course she died, which was not fun. And then at the end, when they burned down the village, and the young slave, he's like, he's yelling for his mom, and then it's his mom that or like the spirit of his mom that goes to warn Dororo and Hyakkimaru of like, hey, you should go check out this stuff. That was a good moment. But yeah, I don't know. Any last kind of comments or things on the actual story or art that you want to discuss?
Oh, I think it's just like closing thoughts. Like, I really liked this. Like, I knew this guy must be a legend for a reason, but like reading something from so long ago, I'm like, like just sensibilities about like pacing and storytelling and all kinds of things can just grow old, can grow stale. Like, maybe this is the sort of thing I will like recognize as being good, but I won't feel very engaged with it because it's just way different than what I'm used to in a story. But I really liked it. It's really fun. I think the storytelling is just like a fun like buddy adventure. It's got like, I love the gruesomeness of it. Like, I love like that intersection between it being cartoony and not bloody, but just like, here's this dog. I sliced the dog in half because it's a demon.
That's usually not a selling point for people.
No, but just like it looks like this goofy, like lopey-legged, like cartoon dog, and he's like, that's a demon, and he slices it straight in half, and then it like turns into like smoke and rises towards the sky or something like that.
Yeah,
that stuff I loved. I love the stuff like with Dororo and his backstory. I feel like what it does is actually like it felt very modern, that twist that they give us. Like, I was not expecting that from a story written in like the 60s.
Yeah.
Because most of like the stories I would have expected from around that time would be like, they only let boys be soldiers, so I'll dress up as a boy. Or, oh no, I'm lost here in this war-torn country. Maybe I will be safer if I disguise myself as a boy. It's never like, I am a boy. I just am. Like, this was just a different sort of story that, like, is something people are telling today, but I was not expecting from, like, this far in the past. And I thought that was just, like, a really cool, interesting thing to see, and I like what they do with it. I would have liked to have seen more, but I also like this story does just kind of end very abruptly. But I also like, as I said, just how foggy everything is. Like,
sure,
maybe nobody really remembers what the situation is, but Dororo's a boy. He's just going to keep going out there trying to take swords and steal things from people, and he's going to be happy.
So I think another one of my favorite moments is when Dororo is at someone's house. He's like, well, I guess we're just waiting here for an hour or two. Time to get to work, He just would just go take stuff, and he's like, what are you doing? You can't just, this is someone else's house. He's like, I'm a thief. Like,
that's
what
I do.
So yeah, it's good. It's fun. It's a fairly fast read.
Yeah.
Too. I think most modern volumes of this it's all one big book. I think the one I read was an older version. It was kind of divided up into 3 volumes. But yeah, it's a good read. I think it's fairly suitable for younger children. There's maybe 1 or 2 iffy things, but even those aren't in like a bad context.
No, it's just like the brutality of war, really, would probably be the worst thing. But if you've got like a weird history buff kid that knows war stuff, this will just be par for the course, I guess.
There's some nudity, but it's more like this woman like pops a teddy out to start breastfeeding, and it's in there for like 2 panels, and that's it.
Yeah. Our main characters are like 11 and 14. Like, they barely know what girls are.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically what it is. It's like, this is life. Move on. If you had to recommend something else, like if someone liked this, what else might you recommend to them?
I would tell them to go watch Metropolis, the anime movie that... Oh, I think the director is named Rintaro, but a lot of it is from Osamu Tezuka material, and it's got that look to it. And it's from, like, the early 2000s, so there is some, like, wonky-looking CGI mixed in with the cell animation. It's from that era of animating things. But it's a loose retelling of Fritz Lang's Metropolis, which I know you watched earlier this year with Paul.
Yeah. Okay, I was one, because in my head when you first mentioned it, that's the only Metropolis I know is the old, like, 1920s sci-fi movie. I guess like 1930s. It was somewhere around there. But yeah, so I was like, I know she's talking about an anime, but that's not what I have in my mind.
This is it's also got like the dystopia and like the downtrodden workers and like the robot girl who might be, you know, more than a robot. She might be closer to a real woman. But like it's chock full of robots. You know, it's fun. It's been like a favorite of mine and my brother's for... I mean, maybe if they're like, you know, street robots that are like, and here's the traffic line, we'll come back and paint it, you know, R7P3 is going to come back and paint this later, who knows. But yeah, it's full of robots, it's fun. Weird ending. You'll know it when you get to it, but it's still been like a favorite of mine and my brother's for years. We love Metropolis.
I will have to check it out then. Anything else?
Just that and Pinocchio were all I was thinking of.
That's a good one as well. Good call on Pinocchio. Yeah, I mean, we've mentioned Disney, I guess some of his earlier cartoons, that's like, if I were to animate this, I would want it in that style. Yeah. That old, like, 1920s, 1930s kind of cartoon from Disney. I would say Lone Wolf and Cub.
Oh, yes. I did think about that, too.
That I would recommend. It's much more mature than this, but it does... It's not Monster of the Week, but it's kind of like Hit of the Week. He's an assassin. It's him and his child, and it's a very, very long manga. I think I've read like 2,000 pages worth of that manga, and it's only like a third of it. So it is a lot. It is so long, but it does have an overarching plot, but it gets there very slowly, and it just each kind of chapter is a new story. It's a new vignette or a new assassination or something that happens there, and some of them have morals and lessons and stuff like that, and some is just like, here's a sweet samurai fight. It is awesome. So there's that. I just had another one. There's an anime called Mushishi that I would recommend as well. That's a lot slower, a lot quieter and peaceful, and it's more about this, not really spirit detective, but like spirit doctor, I guess, who's kind of traveling the land and would just run into people and their families in work situations or who knows what, where there is some kind of spirit or demon that is involved in their life or their story, and he exercises it in one way or another. But it's a very beautiful show. Like, it's something you can just like, wow, this is like, it's so peaceful. Like, it's, I don't know, it's hard to describe, but it's fantastic. So I would recommend that as well. And I think that is it. Pitches for next week.
Yes.
Let's move on to that. Is this still going to be a Halloween one?
Yes, this is the last of my series of Halloween themed pitches. And so first We did a TV show, we did a comic series, we did a podcast, and now these are 3 movies. I feel like even though horror is something across all mediums, like a horror movie is really like where it's at. They are the most closely tied together. And earlier this year, you and I watched Young Frankenstein, and I started thinking that Frankenstein was lonely without another classic movie monster to hang out with in our back catalog. So, pitch number 1 is Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Nice. Okay.
From 1992, directed by Francis Ford Coppola. This stars Gary Oldman as Dracula. I think Jonathan Harker is Keanu Reeves. Winona Ryder's in this as one of the ladies. I don't know who all is in this, but I it's like a big star-studded cast.
Keanu Reeves is a vampire in actuality because he does not age at all.
Yes. And this is the story of Dracula, which, as described by IMDb, is Count Dracula, a 15th century prince, is condemned to live off the blood of the living from eternity. Vampires, you heard of them. Young lawyer Jonathan Harker is sent to Dracula's castle to finalize a land deal, and when the Count sees a photo of Harker's fiancée Mina, the spitting image of his dead wife, he imprisons him and sets off for London to track her down. So yeah, just classic vampire action, gothic, broody, sultry, the whole deal.
Yeah. Sounds good. That's pitch number 1.
Pitch number 2 is An American Werewolf in London. This is from 1981. This is directed by John Landis. This is renowned for its use of practical special effects makeup. And, like, I've never seen this movie, but I know from, like, clips of it I've seen on TV or whatever, like, the transformation, the practical transformation from man to wolf is legendary.
I've probably seen... I know I've seen some, like, Wolfman movies in the day. And those always had fantastic, like, whoa, fantastic effects.
And the synopsis for this is David and Jack, 2 American college students, are backpacking through Britain when a large wolf attacks them. David survives with a bite. David survives with a bite. Not a bike. That'd be weird if the wolf gave him a bike.
A bike might help him to outrun the werewolf. Maybe he would have survived, you know.
Jack is brutally killed. As David heals in the hospital, he's plagued by violent nightmares of his mutilated friend, who warns David that he is becoming a werewolf. When David discovers the horrible truth, he contemplates committing suicide before the next full moon causes him to transform from man to murderous beast.
Oh no.
So this sounds grim, but I mean werewolf fun, right?
Yes.
Horror classic. And so Frankenstein, Dracula, Wolfman are like the big 3 of horror monsters. And I'm like, who's going to represent our 4th player here? And I thought about Count Chocula, Frankenberry, Boo Berry. Our 4th one's got to be a ghost.
Interesting choice.
And so
or at least invisible.
The most famous ghost I could think of, besides Casper and Patrick Swayze ghost, which, you know, which would be a fascinating watch, but I wanted more traditional horror.
It kind of would have been. I think I would have picked that one if you had mentioned that.
I'm saving that.
Let's go with Casper just for shits and giggles.
I mean, Kyle, you, like, if any of these are too spooky for you, you are allowed to pick Casper. I say this not even as a joke. I feel like Casper is such a weird movie. We could talk about Casper for the entire length of Casper the film.
Yeah.
But the ghost representative I did pick was The Sixth Sense.
Okay.
From 1999, directed by M. Night Shyamalan. Young Cole Sear is haunted by a dark secret. He is visited by ghosts. Cole is frightened by visitations from those with unresolved problems who appear from the shadows. He is too afraid to tell anyone about this anguish, except child psychologist Dr. Malcolm Crowe. As Crowe tries to uncover the truth about Cole's supernatural abilities, the consequences for client and therapist are a jolt that awakens them both to something unexplainable. This movie is renowned for its twist, and this synopsis just dances around the entire thing.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. So we have Bram Stoker's... Is it?
Yeah, it is Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Yeah,
Francis Ford Coppola's Bram Stoker's Dracula.
I can speak good. Dracula, werewolf, ghost.
Ghost.
I'll leave it at that because I obviously cannot speak. I kind of want to do the werewolf one.
Oh, nice. This is the most, like, traditional horror out of the three I pitched. Because, like, Dracula's almost like a drama. It's, more, like, sexy than scary. And Sixth Sense is more of, like, a tense thriller. This is, like...
The most, horror. Good.
Yeah, okay. Get scared, folks.
I'm interested in going back in to see the effects that they had back then, and I know my dad was always a big fan of the Wolfman, and he had that whole like and when the wolfbane blooms at night and something he had that whole thing memorized. And I was like, Dad, you're a dork. Yeah.
What a dad thing to do. My older brother has memorized the Jabberwocky, and that's what he recites to his kids when they're little babies to like get them to go to sleep. Every dad's got something like that, I think.
That's a tough one because those aren't actual words.
Maybe that makes it easier. Who knows? The kid's not going to know if you mess it up.
Yeah, you can just make sounds.
Yeah, Lewis Carroll wrote that. Absolutely.
Basically. Okay, so it's the American Werewolf in London.
Yes.
Okay. Oddly enough, that also sounds like a romantic comedy.
There is an American Werewolf in Paris, and there's a romance movie called An American in Paris. I wish they were just one and the same.
Well, you have your first movie. I did. Get to work.
All right, so for next week, yes.
I guess that is what we'll do.
All right, cool. This sounds fun. Again, outside of that, like, fragment of the transformation sequence, I've never seen another part of this film. I don't know what the rest of it is like.
Okay.
Like, the basic story of Dracula, I know. Sixth Sense, I've seen. This one is the least familiar to me. And what's scarier than being in unfamiliar territory?
True that.
Yep, so next week, for our Halloween scare feature, we're going to be watching An American Werewolf in London, directed by Jonathan Landis. Or just John, it says. I don't know why I had to get formal. I'm not his mother. This is from 1981.
Okay. Well, yeah. I believe that is it then. If you guys enjoyed this episode here, this here podcast, you guys can go give us your life savings over at patreon.com/the Whatnauts. And for as little as $1, you can support all of our shows and get them early, among other things. And I guess that being said, next week we're going to be talking about American Werewolf in London. Mm-hmm. Join us for that. Go watch that. Go do what you have to do. We will be back here next week then. My name is Kyle Springer.
My name is Melissa Wilkinson. Are we doing our social media? Did we do that already?
Good call. Thank you, Melissa. Where can,
not like I'm...
I was like, let's wrap this up. We had a great episode. We're good to go. All of the things. Sell your souls on all of the social medias and follow us on all of that stuff. Melissa, where can they find you?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Wilkywit, WILKYWIT. Not like I'm hungry for follows or anything. It's like, oh, I'm used to saying this every week. If I don't say it, what happens?
They'll never be able to find you ever again.
No.
Be terrible. If you guys want to yell at me on the internet, I'm at Yo Kyle Springer on both Twitter and Instagram. Instagram now. I'm still slowly starting to build up a Instagram for myself, because that is a thing that I guess people do on the internet.
Yeah, I like it.
So there you go. Cool. And if you want more updates on any of our podcasts, you can follow us on Twitter at the Whatnauts. And I guess that is it for real this time. So like I have said like 500 times now, my name is Kyle Springer.
And I'm Melissa Wilkinson.
And this has been episode 30 of the Whatnauts Review Show. We will see you guys next week. Adios, guys.
Bye.